Welcome to the Parable Arrows podcast, where we wrestle with story to seek deeper truth. We believe that engaging with the art of the world can help us discern more of what God, as the true artist, is trying to reveal in the beauty of his story. Join us as we discuss movies, ideas, and practice engaging with art, God's word, our thoughts, and each other.
Hey Archers, this is Josh coming at you right before our Sinners podcast trilogy, which I'm very excited for you all to get a chance to listen to. Before we get into it, I have a couple announcements to kind of detail out what our new release format is going to look like. So moving forward, episodes will now be released in trios. So what we're going to do is have a summary and message episode, an audience and rethink episode, and then a theology episode. Our goal behind that was to first break up our discussions into smaller, more consumable chunks instead of our hour-long session. So same amount of content, same amount of discussion. It'll just be a little bit more bracketed, so hopefully that's a little bit easier to consume. The second thing is we wanted to give more time to each of our sections and allow us to really sit in, especially sections like our theology discussion. Right now, or in the past, it was kind of feeling like it was kind of tacked on, so we want to give that a little more energy. And then lastly, as of right now, our strategy is to release all three of those chunks at once because you probably still want to watch episode to episode or listen episode to episode. Even though the algorithm best practices would probably say to do a delayed release, we are willing to say bunk to that if you would prefer to have them all at once and listen as you want as they come out. So if you have any thoughts or feedback or opinions on that, you can definitely let us know. We have a fancy new email now, which you can send that contact to, which is info at parablearrows.com. So a little note about our episode. I'm going to be sitting down with Gabe. Gabe is a guest that we had on our video podcast when we talked about soul. He and I had lunch one time and talked about sinners and got really into it. So he's going to be a great addition. So before we get into our discussion with Gabe, I'm recording our summary section separately. So here we go. Set in the atmospheric backdrop of 1932 Mississippi, the film Sinners follows World War I veterans and twin brothers Smoke and Stack, portrayed in a compelling dual role by Michael B. Jordan. The brothers returned to their hometown with the dream of opening up a juke joint, a sanctuary for the local black community to find solace and joy through the power of the blues. They poured their hopes and stolen Chicago mob money into this venture, joined by their aspiring guitarist cousin, Sammy, whose soulful music becomes the very heartbeat of the film. But their aspirations for a new beginning are quickly shattered by the arrival of a sinister and ancient evil. The primary antagonist is Remick, a charismatic and menacing Irish vampire who, along with his newly turned thralls, descends upon the juke joint on its opening night. Remick is drawn by Sammy's transcendent music talent, which is so powerful it's said to bridge the gap between the living and the spirit world. The film takes a bloody and tragic turn as the grand opening becomes a fight for survival. Stack's white passing ex-girlfriend, Mary, becomes a pawn in Remick's game, being turned into a vampire and used to infiltrate the juke joint. In a pivotal and shocking moment, she kills Stack, who is later resurrected as a vampire himself. The ensuing chaos sees many of the film's endearing supporting characters, including the juke joint's cook and Smoke's estranged wife Annie, fall victim to the vampiric curse. The climax is a brutal confrontation where Smoke, with the help of his now vampire brother Stack, manages to defeat Remick as the sun rises. However, the victory is not without immense loss. Smoke, in a final act of heroism, sacrifices himself to protect Sammy and eradicates the remaining threat of the local Ku Klux Klan, who are poised to attack the survivors. In a poignant and surprising epilogue, set 60 years later, an elderly and successful blues musician, Sammy, is visited by an ageless Stack and Mary. They reveal that Smoke spared his brother on the condition that Sammy would be allowed to live out his life in peace. This final twist leaves audiences with the haunting image of the two vampires, forever bound to the night and the enduring legacy of the music that started it all. Welcome, Archers. This is the Parable Arrows podcast. I'm your host this week. Femi is still doing big old cool dad life stuff, so he is out, but I'm joined by the fabulous sole guest video podcast dude, musician extraordinaire, Gabe Douglas.
Hello.
Hi, Gabe.
Wow, I'm just going to take that soundbite. And anytime I go to speak anywhere, just play this for my intro.
Like this, I got this for free. It's not super great, but just, run with it. So Gabe, we're talking about sinners today. Mm-hmm. This is going to be a little bit of a dance to talk about because we want to not ignore completely some of the discussion that has already happened around sinners in regards to like Christianity and stuff. But we're also not going to approach it the same way of focusing on, do you see it? Do you not see it? All that stuff. So we're just going to dive right into the message and audience rethink and theology after that. So for you, Gabe, what was a message that you thought this movie is conveying sinners?
I mean, there's so many. I think you and I were just talking about this, Josh, a little bit of the danger that our talents that we've been given can pose to others in terms of maybe people are jealous of those talents and skills. They want that. But then I think very easily people can exploit us for the talents that we have. It can be used for their own benefit in like not a safe way in a lot of ways. And I also think there maybe is a message of you have this talent, so you have to use it. Like you couldn't just have it.
I like that.
Like just to have it, Like I feel like in that kind of opening scene, there's this pressure of like, Sammy should do music like in the church, or even like I think his dad's approach was he was so scared of like
what it could do.
Yeah, because it does have so much power there. I don't know. I think there's so many different messages in this movie, but I think we do see another message is like the power of music, how it does bring people together, about how this, that huge kind of like musical dance number, you see kind of like this really cool historical timeline of all these different kinds of music and how that's influenced, different groups of people, and how, especially for oppressed people, music has come out of those times and has also helped those marginalized groups of people feel like, we're going to make it. A lot of the kind of podcasts that I listen to about, the movie Sinners I think people were really torn about that dance scene.
Yeah.
Some people were like, this is awesome. This basically turned into a musical for like,
30 seconds. It was great. Yeah.
And then some people are like, what in the world? What happened?
Yeah.
I thought it was really cool, but it was surprising.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So you just we'll come back because we're going to talk extensively. I'm excited to talk about that scene, but something you noted that I didn't think of before, and it's kind of a sub message, I think. So I agree with you. Like my thought was there are gifts and abilities God's given us, and it's really important that we let them shine, but how we let them shine and where and with who and for what is equally important. And so we have to be careful like who we let influence us. And that might include like people in the church. Like something you said is Sammy's dad is like almost terrified of his gift. And on the other side, you have Smoke and Stack who are like, no, dude, this is the greatest thing ever.
Yeah.
And naturally, like if we are given different giftings, whether it's creative or leadership, or even just thinking of like all the different gifts of the Spirit of like teaching, ministry. I'm for blanking on all the fine. That big list.
Yeah,
that if our only voices of encouragement are ones that are not healthy, and the people around us who are in the faith are constantly being like, no, that's a dangerous gift.
Yeah.
Well, like, I feel like it's very normal for our hearts to be like, well, like, so I'm bad? So I'm not good?
Yeah.
Instead of being like, dude, what you have is really special and it's so powerful. You should be careful with it.
100%.
Well, here's some ideas for you, right? Like, so I want to dig into that message a little bit because there's so many different ways that we could go in this movie, but the core element of Sinners that I thought was really special is music and the power of music and all the different stuff. Your background is you're a worship pastor, right? And so for you, how do you see the power of music playing out in your ministry and at your church in maybe positive ways and unpositive ways? And how do you as a church leadership team like navigate that creative influence that music can have?
Great question. So I find that I feel like there's a lot of ways my brain could take this.
Yeah,
but I think music, I'll start with this. Music is so powerful. It's this language, a lot of times music is described as this music that everybody understands. But at the same time, it takes its own kind of life form, depending who you ask. And so music is a powerful tool. Music is emotional. Music helps us maybe think about things in a different light. So it's the same in church music as well. And so I think for a positive in the church space, I think there are some people who may not connect with a sermon or maybe a prayer, but can connect with a song, which is why, this is a whole nother podcast of what I'm about to say, but that's why it matters the songs you pick. It matters what you're saying, because if you're saying something that's not true about God, that is scary and that is dangerous, because then we're in a sense kind of leading people, maybe even manipulating people to think something about God that is not true. So I think the positive of church music is I think it brings people into maybe a new way, a new form of encountering God. I think also music just connects people. I think that there's so many times at my church where it feels like the time of worship through music is such a fun time. Like it's very energetic. It's very eclectic. Like it feels like we're all a community together, like singing and playing, doing this thing together. And there is something that is like pretty, I don't know, I want to say almost magical maybe about that like, I don't know how to put it into words, how cool that is. And I think it's cool because it leads us to, okay, while we are singing, worshiping on earth, in heaven, that same thing is happening. So it's like we are mirroring what is happening in the heavenly realms, however you want to think about that.
Yeah.
So I think those are the positives. I think the negatives, kind of what I was hinting at before, is there's huge danger in like manipulation. If we're singing songs that maybe aren't accurate to the character of God or what he's done for us, I think that it can be really scary and can lead people away. And I think that looking at our songs is like, is this actually represented in scripture? And then the other thing, kind of a big negative, I guess, or a danger, I should say, in worship music is I think sometimes we can confuse God speaking through a song, God working, with just the emotion of music. Like music is emotional. Yeah. It's going to make you feel a certain way. And I think that we have to be okay in the church music space saying, maybe God was working in that song, but I was just feeling emotional because that song moved me. Yeah. And that is fine. That's totally fine. But I think if we are just basing God moving on just the music being good, that's limiting God. Yeah.
That's interesting. Well, as you're saying that too, it's making me think, again, we're coming back to the scene of Sammy versus Remick, who's the villain. Yeah. But there's this almost juxtaposition in the movie of like the war of music. Mm-hmm. Like there's literally a war going on in the film about like which resonance and song and sound are you listening to, and what does buying into that vibe and whatever lead to. And I think something you're getting, so this is kind of where I'm thinking of like this message is, we were just talking before the podcast started about what seems to be a tendency in Christian culture to see art of any kind, whether it's a movie, a book, a comic, a show, a song, whatever, as they're almost like these keys to some weird inner door that we don't know we have.
Yeah.
And if we put the wrong movie key in that door, it's going to open us up, and all of a sudden all this evil and blah, blah, blah is going to like flood in. But as you were talking, I think something that really stood out to me is, so that's been a lot of the critique of Sinners, that it's dark.
Yeah.
There's all these unhealthy messages and stuff like that, which, you know, Parable Arrows were all about like dodging that and kind of like going our own direction. But I think even deeper, you're hitting at a nuance that is, I think, really challenging, is while it's easy to critique that in a movie that's literally called Sinners, at the same time, that's still a danger that can pop up in the church too on a Sunday morning. And it's not exclusive to secular culture to buy into the emotional side of art. And it's not just that, you know, these things are arbitrary. It's that if we do engage creativity, which is a product of God's design, we are not necessarily like opening ourselves up, but we're letting other things in ourselves drive us potentially, versus us being like, I am Josh, I'm in the spirit, I'm in control, I can hear this song and not let it just like yank the wheel of my life.
Yeah.
So so hearing that, because that was an analogy I was kind of playing around with the other night when I was kind of journaling in prep for this talk, was this idea of like art, music, creativity. You know, we see in Sinners, like Sammy starts playing and the whole juke joint just stops. Yeah. Which is really cool.
Yeah.
And then everyone starts kind of like moving in their own way and all this stuff. But then you have other moments, or like even when he's talking to Slim, you know, he plays and Slim is like, this kid has it, or, you know, or Remick, and they're all singing and playing their guitars. Like, there is this power that creativity has to kind of like stop us.
Yes.
But it seems like the movie's kind of arguing in a certain sense, we are still, or should be still, in control of where that creative influence takes us. So talk to me about that from your perspective as an artist who's making music, as a worship leader. Like, what do you think that looks like for us to build, you know, into this whole like idea of using our gifts and you being an artist and stuff like that, leading people potentially well, but also like not maybe buying into maybe some of the like hocus pocus kind of theology when it comes to creativity?
It's a great question. I think, as you were describing, I was remembering that scene of like two things from the movie of, you know, when Sammy is playing the guitar in the back of the car as they're driving. That's like, and that comes back at the end, right? It's so powerful. But then, in that kind of dance scene when he starts playing, it's like a trance kind of. Everybody stops. And I think there's something to be said about just live music in general. I think the reason that has not gone away is that there is something about seeing your favorite artist, favorite band or whatever, but there's also something about literally anything could happen. This song could go horribly. The speakers could shut off at any second. And there's something like really scary about the artist being up there being like, we hope that does not happen.
Right.
But there's something from an audience perspective of, you are like at the edge of your seat and like, or standing, or whatever it is, like whatever kind of venue you're at, of like, oh my gosh, like anything could happen. And then when they play your song, it's like, it is this like spiritual, I think, experience. I went to a concert this last year in Madison, and it was this like funk band, and the lead is this electric player. His name is Corey Wong, and he played this song called Meditation that he wrote with John Baptiste. And it's just this really long kind of instrumental where he's just playing the guitar. And it was like 7 or 10 minutes. And the whole time I just was like looking at him the whole time. And it's like this song that builds. And when the band finally comes in, it's this resolution. And when that happened, I and all the other people around me, we just started like screaming, because it was just like, oh my gosh, this is an insane moment we all experience at the same time. So I think that in the church space, I think that also happens too. And I think I've been trying to, in my own leadership, like not diminish that. Like don't shut that down, because like this is the creative experience is something God gave us. And there's definitely been worship sets where I feel like, I don't know, I almost feel like untethered. Like I feel like I'm going to start like floating away. It's like a very weird experience. And I think afterwards there's been many times where I'm like, I don't really know what that was. Like, I don't know if that was the Spirit of God. I don't know if that was just a musical creative moment, you know? I guess all that to say, I think there needs to be a balance of accepting that the power of music, and not just music, any kind of art has in any kind of space, but not uplifting that so much that I guess it becomes about the art specifically, and not like you're actually using art to get to know like creator God. Yeah. And I think we can really easily be like, it's about the music, it's about the songs. It's about whatever art you're creating, you know?
Well, as you're saying that, so in our theology section, a little bit of a spoiler, I wrote down Exodus 36, which is where God specifically, this is like one of the only times in the Bible, if not the only time, God specifically gives his spirit to artists to make the temple, and he gives them all sorts of skills and stuff. I didn't notice this until I was just searching it today, literally like 20 minutes ago, but only 4 chapters earlier is when the golden calf incident happens. And to me, what's so fascinating about that is you have 2 instances where beautiful metals are being used, beautiful design is being used, but the goal and the intent of either of those is very different. And so, oh man, I want to jump into our rethink because I just had another question, but maybe this will be kind of our last part of our message is to this idea we were talking about, like gifting. You have Aaron who makes the golden calf, right? And they're doing it out of impatience because where's Moses and whatever, give me your earrings. We'll just like throw something together and we'll worship it. And then you have this other version where you have Bezalel and Aholiab, and they're specifically equipped, you know, and like the descriptions of the temple are just like bananas. Like it's crazy. I feel like there's this tendency in church culture, again, to, when it comes to art, is like there's kind of that simplistic question of like, okay, but like what is the purpose of this art and who is it meant to glorify? And I think when we ask that question, one, the artist then kind of becomes under fire, because if it's art that's a little bit darker, i.e. sinners or something else, it says like, well, how on earth does that glorify God? Because it's dark and it's gritty and blah, blah, blah. And it becomes very limiting for the kinds of things that we can create. But then on the other side, we have people very blatantly creating with the intent to dishonor God and Aaron. So like, talk to me about maybe that spectrum where there's like art and creativity that is specifically meant to glorify self and glorify something that isn't God, and then art that is actually maybe up to the engagement of the audience to actually turn it back towards God. Does that make sense?
I think so, yeah. I think it's a great question. One thing that was in my head was last weekend I went to the Lakefront Festival of Art, and it's at the Milwaukee Art Museum. And I was walking through this exhibit that they have, and it's like Spanish art from like the 16th and 17th century. And it was really moving because I'm looking at these paintings that are from like, you know, like 1640. And it's so cool that it's been preserved. But so much of it was different stories in the Bible that are being depicted. One of them that I was really moved by was the prodigal son, when he realizes, when he's in the like pen with all the pigs, and he's like, oh my gosh, these pigs are literally eating better than I am. And he has this like probably very dark, humbling moment. And I was just thinking about, I was like, man, I feel like that's a great example of like art that like is beautiful, dark for sure, heavy, but leads me to think about the story of the prodigal son, which everyone knows that even if you're not a church person, don't believe in Jesus, like you understand the concept of like the prodigal son. So I feel like that's a great example. And there were so many other paintings there that I had that same experience. as you were talking, I was thinking about in the Christian music world, there's so many songs that churches have done and have debated over. And they're like, we cannot sing this kind of song or whatever. And I hope this isn't like divisive for your listeners, but
this is what the goal is.
Okay.
Critical thinking. So
the song I think of, one of the big songs recently is like the song Reckless Love by Corey Asbury. And people were up in arms about that. Like, there's no way God's love could be reckless. And I think it just became such a divisive thing. And regardless of whatever your theology on that is, I think that can be a more negative side of we become so distracted by the art that we're kind of not even talking about what matters. Obviously, if there is a song that like I feel like collectively is like distracting, then I think it's worth a conversation 100%. But I think that there's so many Christian artists where they'll interview them and their songs are being done in church services. And there's so many examples of these Christian artists saying, I actually never meant for that song to be done in like a corporate worship service. I wrote that as maybe out of a journal entry or where I was in that moment. And yes, I wanted people to hear it, but I wanted people to use that as like, I wanted people to listen to it. And so even kind of going back to what you're saying, the original intent of the art, I think people a lot of the time skip over that and use it for their own kind of use. But if that use is not the intention, then there's going to be like, you're going to get lost in that.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I think going back to the original intention, and I think that can be a negative that we can like move forward in so quickly that we want to use like art for our own benefit instead of maybe taking a step back and being like, what was this for? Like, can we talk to the artist if they're still around and see like, hey, what was your thinking behind this?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. No, that's good. I was just jotting down as you were writing, like, just the difference where it seems like, and I feel like this is the plight of the artist, especially in the church, is everything can get so hyper scrutinized where it's like, even as you pointed out, the word that got hung up on is reckless. God isn't reckless. Blah, blah, blah. You know, like we make all these judgments about his decisions, but then, you know, we go to the scriptures and we have golden calf, man made something out of gold, worship self out of, you know, anxiety and fear, like literally. Man builds the temple, worship God, honor him, all these things. And I think the golden snake actually comes after the golden calf, or like there's one of those where Israel does something crazy, and God's literally like, make a golden snake. Everybody who looks at it is healed. Everybody else gets bitten and dies. Yeah. Okay, so again, you have something where it's like, okay, so is gold evil? And I think that's what we start doing in our simplicity is, and I think this is what's happening kind of in around sinners, is there's this like, oh, the gift is bad. Oh, the tool and the element in your thing is bad. This is bad. And it's like, well, what if it's actually not about the gift and the person and all this stuff? It's how we're using it. And these things are actually maybe calling us to task to be like, hey, did you notice that you got hung up on one word? That might be a sign that you're overly zealous about certain things and don't have a healthy relationship.
I think that's a great point. And I was thinking of Sinners in the very end, you know, when Sammy's, you know, he's like 70 now, playing like blues and like killing it. But then is it Stack?
I can't remember. I don't know.
I always
one of the twins comes back.
And he's like, I like this new stuff, but like, why aren't you doing your old stuff? And it goes back to that scene where he gets out his acoustic and goes back to what I would say his like heart language music. And it's, at least to me, it seemed like he hadn't played that song in ages. It doesn't matter. The muscle memory is there because it comes from a deeper place. And I think there's something about that of, can we get back to that in our art? Personally, but also like in the church space, what does it look like to have the art as a tool to lead us back to the Lord? As you were talking about this, I was thinking of the story in John 4 where Jesus is talking to the woman at the well. Yeah. And he's saying that, you know, he's talking to the Samaritan woman, and like there's so much that should not have been happening. But Jesus is saying, there is a time now where you will not have to go to the temple. You're not going to have to go to a place to encounter God. The work I am doing is going to cause you to be able to encounter God wherever you are internally. And the Samaritan woman is like, are you serious? Because that's game changer for her, because they weren't allowed to go.
Yeah.
They had to build their
Broke all the
whole other
rules.
temple.
Yeah.
And we're not allowed in those spaces. And so I think that's like, Jesus is breaking down all those barriers. And I do wonder if it's the same now of, we don't have to go to a worship service and have the worship team play our top songs that lead us to God. We can just encounter him anywhere. And when we go to church and experience art, it's almost like extra on top of what we have already encountered with God.
Dude, that's great. So on that note, we're going to close out our summary and our message section, and we're going to jump into our audience and our rethink.